Five Nights at Freddy's 3 map showing up in The Secret of the Mimic is such a crazy reveal to have in the game. I really want to talk about this map a bit today, or more so, I want to go over some of why I think it's important for us now, and what it might mean having this shown to us at all. Essentially, the implications of this being here, and how that connects to the larger story of Five Nights at Freddy's. So to begin, I want to establish what's roughly going on in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, where this map is first seen. More specifically, what is this location being used for during Five Nights at Freddy's 3? On Steam, part of the Five Nights at Freddy's 3 description reads that the owners of Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction, are determined to revive the legend and make the experience as authentic as possible for patrons, going to great lengths to find anything that might have survived decades of neglect and ruin. So in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, Phone Dude explains how they'll be using this location and its layout.
Like, the attraction opens in like a week, so we have to make sure everything works and nothing catches on fire. When the place opens, people will come in at the opposite end of the building and work their way toward you, then past you, and out the exit. Yeah, you've officially become part of the attraction. You'll be starring as the security guard. So not only will you be monitoring the people on the camera as they pass through, you know, to make sure no one steals anything or makes out in the corner, but you'll also be a part of the show. It'll make it feel really authentic, I think. Right now the place is basically just, you know, flashing lights and spooky props.
So essentially, the owners of this attraction are going around hunting down authentic Five Nights at Freddy's merch to put into this building in order to create a haunted house-like experience for people to enjoy that captures the essence of the Five Nights at Freddy's locations from decades before. So now that we know how the location was being used by the Fazbear Fright attraction team, part of understanding the FNAF 3 map, in my mind, is understanding what it might have been used for originally as well. And we also need to know where this building might be located and why that might matter too. So now that we roughly have an understanding of how the building is going to be used when the place in FNAF 3 opens, now it's time to make some connections. This is the fun part for me. As with all theories and ideas, of course, I simply want to share my perspective and findings. I'm not saying any of this is concrete fact, but I hope it's helpful for somebody nonetheless. So the first connection I think is worth mentioning can be found in Secret of the Mimic. As we fight our way through Big Top's showroom, completing minigames and returning power to fend off the towering robot, it's during one of these minigames that Edwin's Mr. Helpful Bear mentions,
"Some of our available themes include castle, rodeo, space, Great Barrier Reef, circus, and haunted house."
And there's some reasons I wanted to bring this connection up. While we do see a lot of themes in Murray's Manor that fit the description that Mr. Helpful talks about here, especially castle, rodeo, and space, we really don't see Great Barrier Reef or haunted house themed items all that much in the manor. However, we do actually see these themes show up somewhere else in the FNAF game timeline. A specific game I'm thinking of is in Help Wanted, where we do in fact actually see a Great Barrier Reef themed area during our time in the Foxy's Pirate Ride. Additionally, the next Foxy ride we see is in Help Wanted 2, and that time it features a lot of the rodeo themed stuff that Mr. Helpful mentioned before, with additional areas that do seem to be showcasing more spooky aspects there as well. The point of these things showing up then is not just to connect this attraction back to Mr. Helpful's wonderful advertising skills, but more specifically to show us how these themed attractions branched out even after Edwin's story, as well as the significance of this Foxy attraction being shown at all, and where this Foxy ride is located. And what location might I be referring to here? Well, the location is none other than Fall Fest. While it's possible Fall Fest has been set up at multiple different locations over the years, I do want to point out that in both Help Wanted 1 and 2, we can locate some very helpful visual landmarks to show us that the Fall Fests in these virtual experiences are very likely the same location. Some of the visual landmarks I just want to be sure to point out really quickly are specifically this water tower, this windmill, this vehicle as well. We're shown these same things in both Help Wanted 1 and 2, which for me seems to be showing us that both of these Fall Fests seem to be set roughly in the same area. I could be wrong though, and it's just like a reused asset or something, but I think these details are significant and worth mentioning. I also think Fall Fest in general is just really significant. If you think back to the Curse of Dreadbear DLC, one of the first things we're greeted with is Fall Fest. While this Fall Fest seems to specifically be 1983, we have since then been given other Fall Fest dates going all the way back to 1970. We know now that during one Fall Fest, Fiona passes away, and a lot of the Secret of the Mimic events we're now familiar with occur after. The takeaway here being Fall Fest is an important location, and it's being shown to us over and over in these modern FNAF games. And I'm convinced, at least for now, that we're coming full circle to something. But what does any of this have to do with the FNAF 3 map and location? Well, the Five Nights at Freddy's 3 map we find down in R&D also appears in another Five Nights at Freddy's game besides FNAF 3. But before I show you that, as you might have noticed, in the Foxy attractions I just mentioned, almost all of the characters in these particular minigames are Fazbear ones. Specifically, characters that are not really owned by MCM, ones we don't really see in Secret of the Mimic as much. Like Chica, Foxy, etc. Which to me implies that this map's location, being down in R&D, is showing us that this map was made for and would be used by Fazbear at Fall Fest, well before the events of FNAF 3 even take place. This map is like right in the center of all the other Fazbear projects down here, and seems to be connected to these other projects Edwin was making for Fazbear. Since we know Fazbear is connected to Fall Fest and had various attractions there, I can't help but think this map was used by Fazbear to create a building with this layout for different events which would come and go at Fall Fest. But if you're not convinced, the next thing I wanted to show you is where else we can find this map. And funny thing, we can find this very same map right here in this very same Foxy Ride level in Help Wanted. It's the same map showing up again, which of course could be irrelevant. It could just be a random thing that Mimic program or whatever is expediting the process of this Help Wanted game, just throwing things together. But I think there's something more going on here. I think this map was intentionally placed here for us so that once we had Secret of the Mimic's lore behind us, we could come back and connect the pieces here to help us understand that this map is trying to show something more, connecting us directly to Fall Fest and the Murrays. I personally have even more connections in my own headcanon, specifically how all of this ties directly into the story of whoever we're playing as in Help Wanted 2, whether that be Arnold, Cassie's dad, really doesn't matter too much to me at this point, to be honest, but in one of my previous videos I shared why I thought our Help Wanted 2 player could be specifically Arnold, and that video does tie into FNAF 3 a bit, but for the sake of this video, I will just put a link to that other one here, and if you want to watch that one, go for it. But that aside, being able to connect this map to Fall Fest also helps answer another question I've had about Help Wanted 2 for a long time. See, one thing that's been on my mind a lot in relation to Fall Fest is why in Help Wanted 2, we're not only shown Fall Fest in flames, but more importantly, we're shown the aftermath of the fire in the minigame, specifically the FNAF 3 minigame. In this minigame, we come face to face with a very specific and familiar character, William Afton. Not just Purple Guy though, we specifically are shown Springtrap. And there's no reason they couldn't have just shown the Purple Guy in his pixel form, since we do see pixel-style children in the FNAF 2 Fall Fest game. But no, we see Springtrap. And while this could just be symbolic of some mischief that Afton may have been involved with at Fall Fest, maybe he killed Fiona, maybe he started the fire, I now have a different idea as to why we see Springtrap here. I'm now wondering if the reason Springtrap shows up here is to point us back to this idea that the events of FNAF 3 take place in the same location that Fall Fest's events did. In other words, the Five Nights at Freddy's 3 building that the Fazbear Fright team is using was originally used for Fall Fest, which I personally think is a mind-blowing lore drop if that's what's actually going on here. Anyway, we do have more to talk about, so let me try to get through this. So, another thing I find incredibly interesting is that Phone Dude mentions the risk of fire multiple times, almost as if history is repeating itself. We can now trace fires in Five Nights at Freddy's all the way back to Fall Fest when Fiona died, something that's haunted Edwin Murray since he lost her, something that ultimately spurred so much of the disasters woven into this giant story. And I am basing some of that on the assumption that Fiona did indeed die in a fire. At the very least, Moon.exe seems to hint at such a fire having occurred, and we're again presented with a fire in one of the Secret of the Mimic endings, where we see the manor burning down. But we also have things like the FNAF 6 fire, a fire in a security breach ending, various flaming animatronics in Help Wanted and Princess Quest. The list seems to never end. I bring all this up specifically though because isn't it interesting that Phone Dude mentioned specifically that
so we have to make sure everything works and nothing catches on fire. Yeah, I wasn't joking about the fire. That's a real risk.
And while in that case it's more closely foreshadowing what happens at the end of FNAF 3, the irony isn't lost on me that if this is where Fall Fest once stood, we've now come full circle in a sense. The same building where multiple Fall Fests have come and gone, now housing the monster that started so much of the suffering. But if you're lost, essentially I'm just presenting the idea that FNAF 3's events take place on the same grounds that various Fall Fests of the past also took place. I think the Five Nights at Freddy's 3 map that we see in Secret of the Mimic was either requested by Fazbear or stolen by Fazbear, and that they did indeed use this map layout well before the events of FNAF 3. In fact, I'm not opposed to the idea that the building already existed before Fiona's death, and Edwin has the map of the building here to help with Fall Fest projects. If it's a building that already exists, then to me it makes sense that he'd be creating various projects that are made specifically for this map's building. I can't help but wonder if the reason Mr. Helpful specifically mentions haunted house attractions, even though we haven't seen one in the modern era, is because the building in FNAF 3 was actually used as a haunted house attraction, long before the events of FNAF 3. Specifically, it was made for and was used at Fall Fest as an attraction, later reused and repurposed decades later by the Fazbear's Fright team. I've actually been to several haunted house attractions in my day, and for me the layout of of the building, it just makes a lot more sense if this was always a local attraction used at events like Fall Fest. I mean, heck, even Spookfest from FNAF 6 could tie into this. So for me, this all lines up really neatly, but let's take a look together quick at the newspaper in FNAF 3 and read that together. Local amusement park is getting ready to scare your socks off with a new attraction based on the unsolved mysteries of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Featuring actual relics from the decades-old pizzeria, this new attraction is guaranteed to bring back your childhood in the worst possible way. So the team bringing this horror attraction to life are using a local amusement park, so the location already exists. And as I see it, Fall Fest fits perfectly with this description too. Now, I'm not convinced Fall Fest is still running by the time of FNAF 3, but clearly the location is still used for other things. It's past glory being a local amusement park full of Fazbear characters, Murray creations, and more. Judging by the types of things we've been shown in both Help Wanted 1 and 2, I think it's more than fair to call Fall Fest an amusement park, but I could be totally wrong. And that's fine with me. I just want to offer these ramblings of mine because I think there might be something more to it. There might be something more going on here. But my dear viewer, there is one more thing that I absolutely must show you before I wrap up this video. Yeah, I'm not even ready for this. I'm just not even ready for that. With that, I will head out for now. I appreciate you taking time to watch this. If you enjoy my thought processes here or video content in general, I'd appreciate a sub or a comment. Leave a like if you feel so inclined. And I will see you all next time.